Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to be dusting the marine reptiles. These are the miniature marine reptiles in my collection. The other day I did the dinosaur shells down here. 1, 2, 3. They're looking nice and colourful. It's amazing how much of a difference it can make to dust them. It brings out the colours so much more. And it's better for your health. So I ran out of time the other day, so now it's the weekend. I've got a bit more time. We're going to work on the little plesiosaurs. It's not just plesiosaurs, in fact. It's all of the marine reptiles. Most of these are teeny, tiny little things. A lot of them are chinosaurs, and a lot of them will have company names that I can't remember. This one, well, I can hardly read it. Panoche. This is a tiny little pink panoche, reminiscent of the monster in my pockets. And I've also got my trusty duster, but because these figures are so small, I also have an earbud, or I think a Q-tip in America. So I hope this is working. I hope the signal is coming through. Let me know if it is or isn't. Well, you can't let me know if it isn't, you wouldn't know. This one comes from a Kinder egg. I think it's supposed to be a mosasaur. They don't need much work. They're not as dusty, these ones, as I thought they might be. This is a Pliosaur figure that was on the front of a magazine earlier this year in the UK. The magazine was, I think, a BBC magazine called Dino Andy. I think it's connected to a TV series for kids. And I just happened to spot this Pliosaur. It was in a set with a few other dinosaurs. And there was an Ichthyosaur, this Pliosaur, which is a bit reminiscent, I suppose, of the toyway walking with dinosaurs Pliosaur. I think it's supposed to represent Liopleurodon, although there are no marks on the underside. And it also came in a variety of colours. This is an Ichthyosaurus. This is one of the figures I had when I was a kid. One of my favourites. This is the Panini line. These came with stickers associated with a sticker album. And they have since been reproduced and knocked off by many other companies, but this is the original and the best. They're the largest. They're slightly flexible. They have a really nice bendy material and really clear markings on the underside with the name, in this case Ichthyosaurus, and a number. This is 15. There was multiple multiple species in the set. There's another 2 marine reptiles up here somewhere, an Elasmosaurus and a Pterosaurus, which we will find eventually. Carnegie Aquatic Life. I have all of the Carnegie Aquatic Life tie. This one here, though, is a collector miniature mosasaur. I think it's a Mosasaurus. In fact, these are big enough that I can use a duster. They're basically miniaturized versions of their standard sized figures. This is a funny, goofy looking Pliosaur baby with funny eyes. This one is by D'Agostini, the Italian company that produces books. And the books usually come with collectibles associated with them. And there were several plesiosaurs and other cute creatures. Yesterday I showed the mummy Diplodocus, which is down here, nicely dusted. So they all have this cute look with the big eyes, and the mummy always has eyelashes and the daddy doesn't. So there's usually in the set a mummy, a daddy, and a baby. And the baby I just showed you there was the Pliosaurus baby. This is a Futabosaurus miniature. It's got these little openings on the underside. It's slot into a truck. I think I've unboxed this previously on the Dino Toy Blog YouTube channel. And I can't recall the company name off the top of my head. It doesn't say, but I've got the box somewhere. So it's quite nice. The neck is quite bendy. But of course, I didn't really fancy putting a articulated lorry on the shelf with all of the plesiosaurs, so I removed the plesiosaur and hid the truck away. Hi, Crisscross. This one is a early Bullyland Plesiosaurus. This is the one that's sort of, it's got a weird, almost feathery texture to it. Bullyland. I don't know why. I don't know if you can make it out. I know this inbuilt cam is not very good, but there's a little star design on the flipper. I don't know what the significance of that star symbol is. If anybody knows, let me know. I think it's breaking its neck in the process of looking around. Here is another one of those baby cute plesiosaurs by D'Agostini. This is the baby Plesiosaurus. It's actually one of my favorites. I love it. It's got a wrinkle on the back of its neck where it's got baby fat bunching up. It's just so happy looking. Have you ever seen a happier looking plesiosaur? I didn't think so. Now, these figures are so tightly packed onto this shelf, it's going to take a while to get through them all. This one, oh, I can't remember what this is called. What company makes this one? Number 23 in the set. I know there's also a Kronosaurus in this line. I can't think exactly what company makes this little figure, but there is a definite company that creates it. It's not a Chinasaur. Maybe it will come to me later. This is actually, it's the Loch Ness monster. So I'm in two minds about whether I should add Loch Ness monster figures into my collection of marine reptiles, but I came to the conclusion that if it's a Loch Ness monster that is obviously representing a plesiosaur, so long neck, reptilian, 4 flippers, then I'll add it to the collection. And if it is wearing a hat or mammalian or some sort of creature that's obviously not meant to represent a plesiosaur, then I'll usually skip it. But this is a Loch Ness monster from the Monsters in My Pocket series. This one was released, I think, in the mid-90s. So I've had a version of this figure for many years. I've actually got the whole set of Monster in My Pockets. I loved those when I was a kid. And had, I think I've got the whole of the first and second series and maybe a lot of the third series. This one is, I think, the Colorata Plesiosaurus, Colorata Futabosaurus. So I pointed out before in other videos, I don't know why, but Futabosaurus tends to be depicted in blue. We've seen one already, the one that came on the truck. This one is also blue. There's some sort of meme going on there. And I guess the reason why Futabosaurus is picked out to be depicted in toy form so frequently is because a lot of the companies that make these models are based in Japan, and Futabosaurus is a Japanese elasmosaurid, so it makes a lot of sense. This one's a relatively recent acquisition. This was sent to me by a forum, dinosaur toy forum member called Blue Chrono, and this is by a company called, oh, it says MT-TH. I can't think off the top of my head what the company is called, but it's one I've been after for a while. Do I have Rebor figures? I do have Rebor figures. Rebor have kindly sent me figures to unbox on the blog, so I've got a couple of them. But they're really big and beefy figures, and from my perspective, they aren't the most accurate, and so I don't have space to display them. So I donated most of the Rebor figures that I had to my niece and nephew. I thought they would get more fun out of them than I would. This is a Safari Limited Mosasaur. I think it comes from one of their tubes. Tylosaurus. This is the, I think it's MPC, one of the knockoff versions of the Marx Kronosaurus. I've got the yellow version, but it's the only one I have. Not my favorite color, although it matches the t-shirt that I'm wearing today. This little fellow is from a line called Dino Froz, and I think they the story behind these is that they were supposed to have been frozen and hatched out of the ice. Really weird shape to its body, very wide and not particularly accurate, but it's a plesiosaur. When it comes to plesiosaurs, I'm a completionist. This one's just a random Chinosaur. There's lots and lots of different versions of these miniature plesiosaurs. Some that are very, very similar to each other. And it can be difficult to decide when something is just a colour variant and when something is actually worth acquiring. So here's another example. It's a bit basic Chinosaur, plesiosaur. Ty the science guy says, I'll be back. I'll see you later. I'll probably be here when you get back. High scientific things. This is the plesiosaur that I bought the Mega Bloks T-Rex that I unboxed on a previous video for. I didn't want the T-Rex, just wanted this little plesiosaur, which actually changes colour when you heat it up or cool it down. It goes blue when it gets cool. And I did test this out, and even though it's probably a good 25 years old, it still works, still changes colour. That T-Rex from Mega Bloks has ended up under my bed. I don't know what to do with it. Hi, Captain Dino. Yeah, the T-Rex Mega Bloks. You might have seen the review. Well, it wasn't a review. It was just an unboxing where I built it and ended up accidentally knocking it over in the process. But it was undamaged, no problem. This is the Schleich miniature Ichthyosaurus. Does it say Ichthyosaurus? It doesn't say what name, but I'm pretty confident it's an Ichthyosaurus. This is the one that those knockoff plesiosaurs and ichthyosaurs that I opened up the other day are based on. I don't know why I didn't notice it at first. It's really obvious. The colour scheme is the same, identical. The stripes on its snout, little freckles on the sides, on its flanks. Do I have the Walking with Dinosaurs Liopleurodon model? I do, but not up here. This is on a different shelf in another room. I'll get to it one of these days. It does need dusting as well, but I've divided my collection between the miniature marine reptiles, which I put up here on the top of this shelf, and the larger marine reptiles, which are all stored together on a different shelf. This one is a mosasaur, which I think is from Disney's. Is it from Disney's Dinosaur, or is it from? No, it wouldn't be Disney's Dinosaur. It would be Ice Age, wouldn't it? Is that from Ice Age? Anybody know? Sometimes I acquire these things and I'm not entirely sure where they come from. But it definitely says Disney on the underside. The skull of the Liopleurodon walking with dinosaurs is accurate. It's okay. It's not incredibly accurate. But back when it was created, we didn't know that much about the anatomy of Liopleurodon, and even now we don't have many complete skulls of it. So this is a porcelain plesiosaur, no brand, but it's really nice. It's got lovely big beady eyes, and it actually comes in a set. So this is presumably the parent, and over here is a little baby, which is exactly the same color scheme and style. Scientific Thing says no, it isn't from Ice Age. Okay, so what's it from then? Because if it's Disney, there's no mosasaur in Disney's Dinosaur, is there? So did they create figures to go along with that film that weren't in the film, or am I forgetting some other Disney feature that did have a mosasaur? In case anyone's wondering who's just joined, we're talking about this miniature mosasaur figure, which says Disney, copyright China on the underside. This figure is camouflaged against my shirt, and again, I don't know why I've got so many yellow plesiosaurs. It's an awful colour for figures to be, but this is one of the ones that was in the set that came on the front of the BBC Dino Andy Dino magazine from the BBC. So that's that, and this was the other one that we looked at earlier, and we'll get to an ichthyosaur eventually as well. This is the bottle top, and the company, I can't think what the company is. Somebody will have to remind me. Maybe the mosasaur is something related to the Fantasia film. Maybe, seems unlikely. There's no date on it, but it looks to me like it was sculpted quite recently, within the last 10, 15 years. Really not sure. Where's my Q-tip? Ah, here it is. Carcaro 34, no, I don't have a clue either. Welcome, by the way, to the live stream. Any idea what that one is? I don't think it's Kyoto. I don't think it's Colorata, but it's one of those companies. This is just another Chinosaur. Nothing particularly interesting. No marks on it whatsoever. Bye, Scientific Things. See you soon. Otakusauridi reviews. Maybe it was an accessory for one of the other larger figures from Disney's Dinosaur. Maybe. I don't know. I can't even remember, to be honest, where I got it. Trying to think. I've got so many that it's difficult to keep a tab on everything, and I don't keep notes. This is another nice porcelain figure. This is a mosasaur. I bought that on eBay recently, and I have unboxed it. So although I can't remember off the top of my head what the company's name is, If anyone's particularly interested, then find the video where I do some eBay unboxings, and I'll presumably make a note in the video what this is. This is what happens when the companies don't brand their figures. There's no marks on the underside to identify it. So unless you can remember, and I've got a terrible memory these days, its identity eventually becomes a mystery. This is poorly the Pliosaurus. And this one is a dinosaur train figure. It's one of two that I have from Dinosaur Train, this one, and there's an Elasmosaurus. I can't think what the Elasmosaurus's name is. Emmy, maybe? Anyway, I like this one because it's got a lot of character. I like its colours, and this actually sat on the top of my wedding cake recently to represent me. It is from Fantasia. Okay, excellent. So this, where is it gone? This little Disney miniature is from Fantasia. Okay. Is it part of a series then? Is there multiple miniatures in that set? And if so, is there a Plesiosaurus? Because I'm pretty sure there's a Plesiosaurus in the film. Corcaro, yep, you were right. This one is a Mosasaur. I think it is by a Spanish or Portuguese company. There's no markings on it, so I'm not sure off the top of my head. But this was given to me as a gift by somebody in Portugal, a colleague, a co-author, and he got these when he was a kid. I think they might have come in cereal packets in Portugal and Spain. So that's a Mosasaur, and I think there are others in the series. Here's another one that I unboxed recently. This is the Honourable Lead Boiler Suit Company. This is the Mosasaur inspired by is it by a Burian painting? Or is it by a Charles R. Knight painting? I can't think. But one of these days I'll have to get around to painting this one up because it's got the metal head and then the resin or plastic body. It looks a bit unusual. Very retro. We know that the Mosasaurs didn't have these scales, these frills running down their back, but they still look awesome. This is an Ophthalmosaurus by Fauna Casts. It comes on a base, but I've taken it off of the base because the base is so huge relative to the size of the model. Fauna Cast is a line that was sculpted by a Dinosaur Toy Forum member called Malcolm, and he consulted with the forum members to get the anatomy correct on these figures, and then he would hand paint them. He's dropped off the radar recently, and a lot of people have been after figures of his for a while, have been promised them and haven't been forthcoming, but I think he's reliable. He's just going through things in his life that mean he can't provide the figures as quickly as he would like. Some cases, I think people have been waiting for years, actually, but they are worth the wait. They're really nice figures and very difficult to get hold of, so quite rare. Could Liopleurodon grow to 7.5 meters? Yep, it certainly could. In fact, there's a tooth in the collection of the Nottingham Natural History Museum where I work, which is about 15 meters. The tooth crown is about 15 centimeters, and we've scaled that up to a skull that is over a meter long, and we think that the full animal could have reached maybe 10 meters or so. So there is evidence out there for very large Liopleurodons. It just hasn't been thoroughly published yet. Here's the Ophthalmosaurus from the BBC magazine, the Dino Andy magazine. Really nice, big-bodied Ophthalmosaurus. Would pliosaurs have lips? Because I saw that Pliosaurus kevinii has thin enamel ridges on its teeth. So does this mean that pliosaurs have lips? Well, actually, all plesiosaurs have enamel ridges on their teeth, with the exception of a few derived cryptocleidids, which lost the enamel ridges. But I don't think they had teeth. I don't think they had... they obviously had teeth. I don't think they had lips, at least not fleshy lips that would cover the teeth. There's no way that they would have lips that would completely cover their teeth, because the teeth are huge, they interlock like this. There'd be no advantage to having big fleshy lips. But of course there would have been flesh around the bases of the teeth so that they could have had a nice waterproof seal around the mouth. This one is a PNSO miniature figure. This is a, let me think, is it Utatosaurus? Himalayasaurus? Shonisaurus? It's one of those, one of the massive Ichthyosaurs. And they've gone for the option of not including a dorsal fin. This is the Dolichorhynchops from, I think, Jack in the Box. This was part of a fast food giveaway. It says 2007 NGHT Inc. Yeah, made for Jack in the Box restaurants. And there's a slot in here that fits into a stand. I don't have the stand, at least if I do, I've misplaced it. I wasn't so interested in the stand again, like with the Ichthyosaur that we talked about before by Malcolm, the Faunacasts, that the stands just take up so much space, and as you can see, I do not have much space, and so I usually put the stands to one side, just focus on the creatures themselves. So this is a really nice Dolichorhynchops that is connected to the movie. What was the movie called? Was it Sea Rex or Sea Monsters? I've got the book down here. Let me have a look. Here we go. It was Sea Monsters, National Geographic. So this book was associated with the movie of the same name. Mike Everhart, one of my colleagues, was the advisor, and the story focused, if I remember, around a Dolichorhynchops that was bitten by a predator and then spent the rest of its day with a injury to its limb. In fact, the rest of its life with an injury to its limb. Sea Monsters: A Prehistoric Adventure. Okay, that's the full title. And the book is called Sea Monsters: Prehistoric Creatures of the Deep. Okay. Here's another Schleich mosasaur. It's a bit difficult to dust this one. Use the Q-tip. Scientific Things says, I saw that some plesiosaurs had bones of pterosaurs in their stomachs. How did they catch pterosaurs? Well, it's very unlikely that they caught them. They probably found pterosaurs either that had died as carcasses that were floating around in the water, or maybe that had, I don't know if pterosaurs could sit on the surface of the ocean like seabirds. I don't think it's very likely. So it seems much more likely that the occasional pterosaur would die and drop into the ocean and end up in the belly of a plesiosaur. They certainly weren't leaping out of the water to catch passing flying pterosaurs. Well, I say certainly, we don't know that with certainty, but it seems quite unlikely that they were doing that. Here's a little Yowie, Australian company. We looked at one of these the other day when we were doing the other shelves here. This is a Lepton, a type of primitive pliosaur with a relatively long neck. This is the Chapmay Ichthyosaur, really striking colours. I've always been fond of this one. Chapmay, I think, is a bit of an underrated brand. Certainly when it comes to the Ichthyosaur, that's a really good figure. There's nothing really to speak of in terms of inaccuracies. They've got the hind fins, they've got the proportions more or less correct, and it's a nice size as well. Not a miniature by any means. This is probably the smallest plesiosaur in my collection. This is the Schleich mini. Teeny weeny thing. This is the Royal Ontario Museum Stenopterygius. Took me a while to get hold of this as well. Made in Hong Kong, ROM, 2.5 meters long. This was when it was alive. Unusual, the flippers are angled straight down, if you can see. But that's quite good because it holds it up when it's sitting on the shelf. Did pliosaurs have tail flukes? Asks Scientific Things. I've written a paper about this, and it seems quite likely that there was something going on at the end of the tail in several plesiosaurs, including Ramaliosaurus, which is a Ramaliosaurid, not technically a pliosaurid. So there's no direct evidence one way or another in the Pliosaurid family. So when it comes to pliosaurs in the strictest sense, we do not know. There's no hard evidence one way or the other, but evidence from other plesiosaurs suggests that they probably did have some sort of minor fluke on the end of the tail. I don't think that this was a tail for propulsion, but more likely for steering, stability, maneuverability in the water. This is another yowie, an ichthyosaur. I can't think off the top of my head what genus it's supposed to represent. Probably Ichthyosaurus, they usually are. Is there sexual dimorphism in pliosaurs, like in the sexual dimorphism in nothosaur limbs, with males having more robust limbs than females? We do not know. There is just simply not enough fossil material of pliosaurs. Unlike in nothosaurs, where you can find entire specimens in huge abundances, pliosaurs are huge. And that means that when you find them, you usually don't find the whole thing nice, neatly arranged. You normally find bits and pieces. And even if the complete specimen is there, there's usually a lot of damage, and it's difficult to study big creatures. This is one of the reasons why sauropods have generally been quite poorly studied, because how do you go about describing in detail a bone that you can't lift without more than 5 or 6 people? So whereas you can look at an entire nothosaur and investigate it, take your time, it can take you days and days just to study a single bone in one pliosaur specimen. And this is why their anatomy is not very well known. So there's a combination of factors that mean we just don't know a lot about them. But that's one of the reasons why I think that they're so fascinating. There's nothing quite like them. They've got lots of mysteries. And that makes them intriguing. Here's another teeny tiny plesiosaur. Can't remember off the top of my head the company that makes this one. I think it came from Japan. I've got the label somewhere. I've got the boxes. I saved all of the information, but it never seems to go into my head. But a nice little spotty elasmosaur. This is another yowie. This is a Kronosaurus yowie with the proportions of the Harvard Plesiosaurus, which we now know to be inaccurate. But they were not to know. Any more questions about pliosaurs? I'll do my best to answer. Although a lot of the time the answer is, I don't know. There's a lot that we don't know, much more that we don't know than we do know. But I'll do my best. Here is another PNSO figure. I unboxed this one. This one I liked because it's got what look like question marks running along the side. So I think this is a Mixosaurus. Why did pliosaurs start to decline in the Mid-Cretaceous? Well, the decline of big pliosaurs in the Mid-Cretaceous roughly coincides with the rise of mosasaurs, especially the big predatory mosasaurs. So possibly they were competing against each other, and for whatever reason, the mosasaurs succeeded in pushing pliosaurs out of their large-bodied macro predator niche. Here's another yowie. Needs a bit of dusting. I think this is representing a Plesiosaurus. The only yowie plesiosaur that I don't have, which I'd love to get one of these days, is a Woolongosaurus. Woolongosaurus is an Australian elasmosaur, which is no longer considered valid. but the skull that was referred to this genus has tooth marks in it from some sort of predator. This one is, oh, what is this one called? This one is, I can't think what this one is called. My brain is not working. Were elasmosaurids aggressive? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, it depends what you mean by aggressive. Yeah, Dino Wars. Yeah, thanks, Karkaro. These are the Dino Wars figures, and they came out about 3 years ago. I found them in the local Tesco, and then ended up going through the packets one by one, feeling them until I found the ones that felt like they were the marine reptiles. And this is a mosasaur. There was also, and we'll probably get to it eventually, there was also a plesiosaur in the series as well. Do you think it's possible for marine reptiles other than ichthyosaurs to have dorsal fins? Not in plesiosaurs. Plesiosaurs swam in a very different way to ichthyosaurs. They used their limbs to fly underwater, not their body. And so they swam much more like a penguin or a sea turtle, which have quite wide bodies and don't require a dorsal fin for stability. I suppose you couldn't rule out a dorsal fin in a mosasaur, which have a laterally undulating swimming motion, but don't know. I don't think it's impossible. Here is the carnivorous dinosaurs safari tube Elasmosaurus. Obviously, it's not a dinosaur, but it is carnivorous. It took me a long time to get this. Sometimes the ones that are the easiest to find are some ones the figures that are the last to add to your collection. I suppose it's similar to if you live in a place with tourist attractions, you don't visit those tourist attractions because they're always there. So you keep thinking, well, I can always do that another time, and then you end up never going. Here is another Chinosaur. This one comes in all sorts of different variants as well, but this one is, I think, the largest and the one with the most detail. Would pliosaurs have lived in groups in a similar way to sperm whales, with females and young grouping together and males living solitary lives? Maybe. The difficulty with questions like this is that there's an assumption that if an animal in the fossil record has immature bones, so bones haven't fused up, that they are interpreted as being babies or juveniles. And that's not necessarily the case. It could be that the adults retained juvenile characteristics. So there are deposits where high abundances of juvenile, or at least osteologically immature specimens have been found, which seems to suggest that plesiosaur babies lived in creches near the shore, and perhaps as the babies grew older, they moved out into the open ocean. So very similar in a way to sperm whales today, but we are not entirely sure. We've got no idea. This is a mosasaur from a cryptozoological series. I unboxed it recently. I can't think again off the top of my head what the line was called, but I think there's a Bigfoot in it and various other mythological creatures. And apparently someone somewhere once found something living or recently deceased that they thought was a mosasaur, and so it's ended up depicted in toy form. I'm not convinced by any of these discoveries of purported prehistoric reptiles washed up on beaches today. Welcome back, Tai the science guy. This is an Elasmosaurus in the Panini line. So another one of the figures that I had as a child growing up. I remember buying and having packets of the stickers bought for me, which always contained in the bag one of these figures, and I ended up collecting enough to fill almost the entire album. I probably got the album lying around somewhere, the sticker album. It also came with a nice cardboard diorama scene, which I have shared pictures of on the Dinosaur Toy Forum. And they're some of my favorite miniatures. They're also completely accurate, just like these ones are incredibly accurate. So this is a accurate depiction of a Elasmosaurus with goggles so it can see under the water. It has a rubber ring around its neck just to make sure it floats, because these were, after all, air-breathing creatures. They could drown, so it needed to have this lifesaver. And everyone knows that plesiosaurs had fluffy green hair on their backs. This one also has a opening underside so it can sit on the top of a pen. But I'm so much of a completist when it comes to plesiosaurs that even little plesiosaur trolls find their way into the collection. Would marine reptiles have a protective eye lens like crocodiles? I don't know. I don't know if there's any osteological correlates, anything in the bones that tells us about those sorts of structures in the soft tissues. So really, I am not sure. It seems quite likely that they would have to have protected their eyes, but really, it would just be a guess on my part. The thing with plesiosaurs, is they have no modern descendants, so there is nothing alive today that is closely related to a plesiosaur or a ichthyosaur. And mosasaurs and marine crocodiles, they have modern day relatives, but they are not particularly good analogues for anything other than their direct descendants. So it seems quite likely that prehistoric crocodiles would have had protective covers on their eyes, like modern crocs do. But when it comes to the other marine reptiles, it would just be pure guesswork. This is a Pliosaur skeleton that I built. It's one of those sets that you excavate out of the rock little by little, and then you glue it together. And I really liked it. It's, I think, I don't know if it said what it was called, but it's definitely supposed to be based on a pliosaur called Pliosaurus. Pliosaurs are also well known to have much larger hind flippers than fore flippers, and they've even got that anatomical detail correct in this model. Look at the Q-tip, it's getting a bit bunged up. Might have to get a clean one soon. We're gonna soon get up onto these shelves on the top. This is another Loch Ness monster figure. This one is by UHA. It's got the mummy, it's got the baby. They gave the Loch Ness monster an official scientific name, a genus and species name. I think it was called Nessiterus rhombopteryx. Nessiterus, of course, after Loch Ness, and rhombopteryx after the shape of the flipper, which is a sort of diamond shape. You can see that here in the model. Now, plesiosaurs don't really have a diamond-shaped flipper. It's much more wing-like and tapered. But this was close enough to a plesiosaur that I decided to add it to the collection. Decided that it represents a plesiosaur as much as it represents the Loch Ness monster. I'm just dusting the base. This one's a bit fiddly. The plesiosaurs come off of the acrylic rods. So here is another miniature plesiosaur. I say miniature, this one's pretty sizable, that I recently unboxed on the channel. It's a Futabosaurus, so of course it's blue, just like all of the other Futabosaurus we've looked at have been blue. And this one is by Tomy. It's quite nicely articulated. There's ball and socket joints on the neck and on the flippers, at least the front flippers. Here is another one of the figures that is from that Portuguese or Spanish line that we looked at earlier. This is looking a little bit more like a monster than it is a plesiosaur, with these weird folds of skin over its flippers, and it's got on the back of its head a sort of frill. Indominus Rex 01 says, I wonder something since the discovery was made that Spinosaurs lived most of their lives in water, would they have feathers? I think probably not. I think that Spinosaurs don't fall inside the phylogenetic bracket of feathered, at least not bird-like feathers anyway. So I don't think they would have had feathers even if they didn't live in the water. This is another Chinosaur, a little bit larger, a distinctive green color with black spots, but no make, no company name as far as I'm aware. If anybody watching knows otherwise, let me know in the live chat and I'll see if I can remember to make a note of it. Here's another honorable lead boiler suit company figure. I had to put this one together myself by gluing on the metal lower jaw. Everything else is resin. This one goes together with the mosasaur that we looked at previously, and they go together in a scene that reflects a historical painting by, I think, Zdenek Burian, but it could be Charles Knight, can't quite remember. Do you know an accurate model of Liopleurodon? Says Scientific Things. I do, yeah. The most accurate Liopleurodon is the Wild Safari Liopleurodon. And I know it because I was the scientific consultant for that figure. The only issue with it is the post-temporal fenestrae, so the holes at the back of the head that the muscles sit in. They are concave in the model, and in life they should really be convex, they should bulge out. And when I was doing the consultation on the figure, I just simply didn't notice that the muscles were so deeply compressed. Looking at 2D pictures is not as accurate as holding these things in the flesh. And I just didn't spot that these were sunken in when I was looking through the pictures that Doug Watson, who was a sculptor of the model, showed me. So that's the most accurate Liopleurodon figure on the market, but with one caveat, that the muscles in the rear of the head should probably be a little bit more pronounced. This is a skeleton of a Cryptoclidus plesiosaur. This one is by a no-named company, but I remember it came in a little plastic egg which contained goo, sort of slimy goo. It's always fascinated me because there's some very distinctive characteristics in the skeleton. So these are the coracoids here, these large flat plates, and they have a crenulated posterior margin. That margin is very distinctive of the genus Cryptoclydus. So this is not a generic plesiosaur skeleton. Whoever has made this Chinosaur has been looking at bones. They've been not just making it up on the fly. This is a Henodus figure by a Japanese sculptor. I can't think what the sculptor's name is, which won't surprise you, my memory's terrible. But he actually gave me this in person as a gift at a symposium of vertebrate paleontology several years ago, probably coming up to a decade ago. And the reason why it's so nice is it's a Henodus, which is a placodont, a type of non-plesiosaurian sauropterygian, and it's standing partly on the skull of a Metoposaurus, which is a type of mammal, a type of amphibian, sorry. Oh, there's just this tiny plesiosaur here on the very front of the shelf, which I excavated from a bouncy ball. So you sometimes find these bouncy balls in museum shops and other places, and they've got toys inside them. So I took a scalpel to the bouncy ball and excavated this little model. It was only when I opened up the bouncy ball that I realized how much smaller these figures are than they look. So the bouncy balls have the effect of magnifying the contents. So it looks like you've got a really big figure, but once you've opened it up and discarded all of the bouncy ball, you've got just a tiny little model inside. All right, we've gone to the very top shelf now, because I need to move these stepped shelving units away so that I can get to all of the figures underneath. So I tend to put the more delicate figures on the top. These are Starlux figures. So this is a Starlux Elasmosaurus. These are from the 1960s and 70s. They're very brittle figures, easily damaged, and that means they're quite difficult to find in good condition. And none of my Starlux figures are in particularly great condition. You can see the head on this one is all scratched, but I don't mind. I'm not so fussy about the condition of the models. As long as they're more or less complete, I don't mind if they're a little bit scratched or damaged. Hi, Crisscross. Here's another Starlux figure. This is a Tanistropheus, really long-necked reptile. There's actually two versions of the Tanistropheus in the Starlux line. This one has a much more elegant, longer neck. Whereas this one, this is the other Tanistropheus by Starlux. This has a much more robust, shorter neck. I'm not sure which of these two came first. This one that we're looking at now is probably less accurate, but it's got more details. So I'm not sure if this was the first one or the second one. They're a very brittle plastic. So this is another Starlux figure. This shows the tip of the snout is missing on this Ichthyosaur, which again shows how brittle and delicate these models are. Scientific Things says, did you see the Safari Limited 2018 models? I did see them. I've actually seen more than have been released because I was a scientific consultant on some of the figures. And so I'm unfortunately for you guys sworn to secrecy, but I do know a few of the other figures that they have in store that they haven't released yet. And I hope that everybody approves of them. The reason why they are so accurate is because Safari are taking it very seriously, and they're consulting paleontologists to get the anatomy correct, which is really good. This is another Starlux. This is a Nothosaur. All of the paint's come off of its head. But as I say, I'm not too fussy about those sorts of details. What do you prefer more, the Carnegie Tanti or the Starlux Tanti? Tanny? You mean Tanny Strophius? If you do, then I think I prefer the Carnegie Tanny Strophius. I don't really like the Anzu feathers, says Crisscross. Scientific Things agrees. Well, I was the scientific advisor for the Anzu, and I had a back and forth with the sculptor on exactly this topic. I felt that it was a little bit too pronounced. The feathers on the back, to my eye, looked more like scales, but the sculptor showed me lots of pictures of modern birds which have very pronounced overlapping feathers that do look superficially like feathers. And since we don't really know one way or the other, I was willing to let the sculptor make that final creative decision. I'm presuming you're talking about the feathers on the back rather than the feathers on the arms, which are accurate as far as we know. We've got good examples of feathered wings in other Oviraptorosaurs. This is another of the Starlux figures. This one's a Mosasaur, a Tylosaurus. Well, we're getting there slowly, but eventually I'm going to have to stop the feed. I've got the flat to myself at the moment, but my wife will be returning soon, and when she does, I'll have to turn this off. So that might happen quite abruptly, but we're okay to go for a little while longer. We'll keep going up the top here. This is a Placochelys, again by Starlux. The Ankylosaurus is amazing. Yeah, I didn't assist with the Ankylosaurus personally. Doug Watson is actually very good at chasing down the scientific literature himself, which I sometimes help, but I only really get involved with the marine reptiles that Doug Watson sculpts. The dinosaurs he's perfectly capable of doing without my assistance, or by approaching the experts in those fields. Otakasauridi Reviews says, I really hope they roll out more marine reptiles. I need a lot more in my collection. Well, I need a lot more in my collection as well. Here is a food, I think it's a, what's it called? B and Aki. I was going to say this is a food, what's it called? Oh, I can't think what they're called now. Fioruta. I was going to say this is a Fioruta figure, but I'm not entirely sure that that's true. It's an Ichthyosaurus and it has the squid in its jaws. I love the Amargasaurus head sculpt from Safari 2018. I'm not sure if you're serious about that, because there's been a bit of criticism about it on the Dinosaur Toy Forum. It looks like it's a little bit shrink wrapped, but it's not shrink wrapped at all. It's just the paintwork, which I didn't have anything to do with. Makes it look, it pronounces the underlying bony structure, but the sculpt itself is not shrink wrapped at all. And then, although the figure has been criticized for having exposed teeth, we don't actually know the extent of the teeth and the lips in dinosaurs. And since it has its mouth open anyway, my take is that it's sort of pulling its lips back, almost like a horse, which is also perfectly capable of baring its teeth, just like you and me. So just because an animal has lips, it doesn't mean you can't see its teeth. This is the counterpart to the ichthyosaur that I just showed you. This is a Plesiosaurus. It's the same line. Again, it says B. and Aki, A-K-I, on the underside. So that's the company. I can't remember exactly what that stands for. Trouble with these little figures is they're very brittle, and when you're dusting it, the duster gets caught on the hard edges and wants to pull them apart. I'm running out of space here in front of me. I really hope they do an updated Spinosaurus. The paint is a bit controversial for the Imago. Yeah, a little bit. I think it looks really good. I think it's just where the white marks are on the head is a little bit confusing. Otherwise, I like the color scheme. This is the Playvision's Nothosaurus. I have the whole Playvision set of marine reptiles. I'll just go through them quickly one by one here. So the Nothosaur, the Shonisaurus, nice stripy color scheme. This is the Henodus, again in the Playvisions line. This is the Placodus, a type of placodont. This is the marine crocodile, Metriorhynchus. Chris Cross says, what's your opinion on Bioniclesaurus? I don't have an opinion on Bioniclesaurus. I don't own any, I don't have any, and I don't think I've even paid any attention to photographs. I'm only really interested in models that represent living creatures. This is the Myxosaurus in the Play Visions line. This is the Mosasaur, which I think is a Mosasaurus, again in the Play Visions line. And lastly, the inevitable Elasmosaurus in the Play Visions line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Play Visions marine reptiles. They should do more Ichthyosaurs models. Yeah, well, I don't know why Ichthyosaurs don't get more love. I think it's because they're a bit too much like dolphins. They're a bit simple. This is an imposter on the marine reptile shelf. This is the PNSO Nyctosaurus. I thought they'd got the figure wrong when I looked at it. It doesn't have any fingers on the hand areas, but then I looked at Mark Whitten's book, and actually Nyctosaurus doesn't have any hands. The only digit it has is the long wing finger. It's lost all of the others. But I did talk with Mark about it when he visited the Dinosaurs of China exhibition, and apparently this sale is very unlikely. I think that the consensus is that the Nyctosaurus crest was a lot simpler, didn't support a crest didn't support a sail, it was just the protruding bones. So now I can remove this, put that to one side. These are really great actually, they give you a lot of space because you can put other figures underneath it but still see them. This is the Tops Plesiosaur. I think, is it an Elasmosaurus or Plesiosaurus? Yeah, it says, oh, it just says Plesiosaur, so they're not particularly specific. And this one has the really bizarre S-shaped curved neck, which is an impossible position for plesiosaurs to adopt. They couldn't bend their neck like that, even though it looks really cool. This is the Henodus from the Safari Marine Reptiles tube. Bye, Captain Dino. There are really few Placodonts models. I really want an accurate Placodont. Well, if you want an accurate Placodont, I recommend this one here. This is the PNSO Placodont. What genus does it represent? I'm trying to remember. I think it might be Placochelys. In fact, let me just double check because I've got the book here. Where is it? Here. This is the book, the PNSO book on marine reptiles. And it's, yeah, here we go. Placochelys. So this is the Nothosaur. It's not a Nothosaur, it's a close relative of Nothosaurs. It's a Placodont. So it's a Sauropterygian, and this is the type that this one I think is supposed to represent. It's got this unusual pointy snout, which is quite clear in the artwork here. So it's a Placochelys. There are a lot of animal groups that don't get much love from figure companies. I'd really like to see more prehistoric whales get figures. Yeah, well, Attachosauridae reviews. The trouble is the companies need to make money, and you're not going to find many parents who go on the hunt for a Placochelys toy or a Zeuglodon toy. They're mostly going to go for the creatures that they're familiar with and that the kids are familiar with, which is T-Rex, Stegosaurus, Triceratops. They're always going to be the most popular figures, and anything that strays away from that will be a risk for the company, and they're just not going to sell as many, which is why most companies don't branch out into much more diverse types of creatures. This is another little Chinosaur, Pliosaur. This one was given to me as a gift from a dinosaur toy for a member called Nemosaurus. Here is the Plesiosaur. It's a Kronosaurus from the, I think it's from the Wild Safari, no, the Safari Limited tube set. Again, the carnivorous dinosaurs tube. It's not a dinosaur, of course, but it ended up in that tube anyway. Along with the Elasmosaurus that we looked at earlier. This is the Ichthyosaurus from the Safari tube, the marine reptiles tube. It looks really nice in side view until you look at it from the front, and it looks like it's like been flattened, been run over by a steamroller or something. Got a bizarrely flattened body. So a bit of a shame. I think it shows you that unless a sculptor consults with the paleontologists, even if they try and do things from their own research, they're always limited by the pictures, which are often side views online. If you do a Google search for ichthyosaur, you're very rarely going to find a picture that shows an ichthyosaur from directly above or from directly below. And so the sculptors have to make up the three-dimensional structure, and they often will get it wrong unless they consult with the experts, which is unfortunately what's happened here. So it's a nice looking figure, but just don't look at it from the top. Scientific Thing says, what do you think about those articulated dromaeosaurs figures? I think you're talking about the creative beasts, and I don't have any. I don't intend to get any either, because they are not marine reptiles, and I'm rather picky about marine reptiles. I tend not to buy many dinosaur figures. I only really do that if I want to review something on the blog, or if somebody sends me a figure to review on the blog or to unbox on the channel. But from what I've seen of the pictures, they look really good, really accurate, very progressive. Here's the Elasmosaurus tube figure from Safari Limited. Oh, Beast of the Mesozoic, yeah, sorry. What did I say? Creative beast. I was close, I got one of the words right. Here's a Schleich plesiosaur with a broken neck. Really weird shaped flippers as well, like little nubbins. But your channel is literally called the Dino Toy Blog. Well, that's true, Crisscross, but I think if I called it the Dinosaur Toys and Other Prehistoric Animals Toys blog, it wouldn't quite flow off the tongue quite as nicely. So that was an intentional decision. Just like the carnivorous dinosaur tube by Safari Limited contained 2 plesiosaurs. Dinosaurs is a bit of a branding term, and that's exactly what it is for the dinosaur toy blog as well. People are familiar with the dinosaur. Most people are not familiar with marine reptiles. This is a little plesiosaur from Nabisco, and I think these were given away inside cereal packets. Marine Reptile Club sounds good though. It does, but it's not just marine reptiles. I've got another website called Plesiosauria.com, the Plesiosaur Directory, which is specifically for plesiosaurs. That's my academic website. But the toy website is much broader, and the focus, of course, is on dinosaurs, but not just dinosaurs. This is the collector Dolichorhynchops, a species selection presumably inspired by the marine monsters book that we looked at earlier, the sea monsters. Yeah, inspired by the Jack-in-the-Box figure. Here is another bizarre ichthyosaur figure. It does belong to a company. I can't think what the name of the company is off the top of my head, but it's embossed with the number 14, so it's one in a series. Nice purple toy. This is a miniature version of the collector Liopleurodon. It's identical really in every other way, except for its size. What's that giant Rex on the shelf from? Asks Crisscross. Which one? This one or this one? Say top or bottom. This is another Safari Limited marine reptile tube figure. Oh, both. The top one is the big red Rex from Jurassic Park by Kenner. The bottom one is a Walking with Dinosaurs original series hand puppet. If you look at the previous dusting videos that I did earlier in the week, I look at both of those in detail and talk about them a little bit, so you can check that out if you want to. This is an alternative version of the Bullyland plesiosaur that we looked at earlier. This one is a different color, but it also has a base. So I decided to get that one, even though I don't have color variants. I tend not to collect color variants. That was different enough from the other version. So here's the other version to justify having both versions. It's also smaller. Here's another one of the Dino Wars figures. Dino Wars, I remember now, it's not spelt like war, W-A-R. I think it's spelt W-A-U-R, like saw. So it's a combination of the word saw as in dinosaur and war as in war. What is it good for? So that represents I think it's supposed to represent Elasmosaurus, even though its head and neck is actually wrongly proportioned. to represent an Elasmosaurus anyway. Your safari Utyrannus broke. Did you drop it? Because the safari figures are pretty robust. This is the second version of the favourite Plesiosaurus. Comes with a base, an acrylic rod to support it. It's actually much more like Cryptocleidus in its body proportions. I've reviewed this on the Dinosaur Toy blog. You can check that out for my full take. In many ways, I prefer the original a little bit more. This is the dinosaur train Elasmosaur. Actually, this is the one that I had on my wedding cake to represent me, not the Pliosaur which we looked at earlier. So where's that? There's the Elasmosaurus. Here's the Pliosaurus. And I went actually for when I put instead of having a bride and a groom on the top of our wedding cake the other week, decided to have a plesiosaur to represent me, and something else to represent my wife. This is a figure by a company called Cog, I think. This is a Liopleurodon. I'm not completely sure. Oh, it fell off my shelf and boom, a missing toe, claw. Now curses my Utyrannus. That's a shame. But it happens. I've got figures in my collection that are broken. But you'll always be able to remember each figure tells a story, and your Utyrannus tells a story of great woe. I have problems with the Safari Limited Dilophosaurus hands. Yeah, well, it's quite an old figure now. It's a little bit wrong. My Papospinosaurus has a missing arm and one toe missing. Didn't bother getting a new one. It gives it character. Exactly. Look on the bright side. This is a Metriorhynchus from the Safari Limited tube. This is a Chap May Plesiosaurus with a weird thing going on the tail. It's got a fin that runs all the way along the top and the bottom. Again, I think that the Chap May figures, at least these ones that are not articulated, they're rather underrated. I think they're excellent toys. I'm trying to think now what this line is called, but if you look closely, you can see it has happy face, sleepy face. They rotate. So they've got two heads. And I think this one there's one that's supposed to represent Elasmosaurus. I think it might be this one. And then there's another one that's supposed to represent Cryptocleidus. But they are so cartoony, they could represent more or less anything. And I can't quite think off the top of my head what the line is called now. If anybody knows, let me know. Here's another Chinasaur made in China. It says Plesiosaurus on the bottom. So no company. This is the Marx Kronosaurus. I've got a purple version. It's a bit of a classic. I know one of the Dinosaur Toy Forum members, his name is Blue Chrono, after one of the rarer colours of the Marx Kronosaurus. But he has got a rainbow of different colour variants for this figure. I've only got the one. Here's yet another variant on the Bullyland. Let's see. I think this actually might just be a colour variant. So that's the green one, and here is the colourful one. And yeah, they're slightly different. On the underside, the text is in a different orientation, but apart from that, they are basically the same. So I'm breaking one of my rules there by having the two different versions. This one is, oh, what is that? That's the Jurassic World miniature Mosasaurus. I think there's different colour variants of this one as well. I only need the one. This is a random Plesiosaur. Yellow matches again my shirt, and I had this since I was a child. It's got a little hole in the top. It used to have a keyring attached to it, and I took the keyring out because I didn't really want it as a keyring. But that's probably one of the first Plesiosaur toys that I ever bought. Crisscross. Yeah, they did. They had a whole line of miniature Jurassic World figures, not just a Mosasaur. Here's the Cryptoclydus in this line, where they have two different heads. There's an angry version, and there's a happy version. They're quite fun. Here is a Bandai Plesiosaur. I just had to look on the underside there because I couldn't remember off the top of my head what the company was called. So there's a Bandai figure. We're probably over halfway through now. It seems unlikely that I'm going to be able to do them all before I have to end the stream, but we'll get as far as we can. Here's another Dolichorhynchops from the Wild Safari tube. By the way, I previously was playing music on my other live streams, and the clever people at YouTube were somehow able to notice, spot the music, and raise a copyright claim against it. And that's why I'm not playing any music. I don't really want to get into trouble with YouTube or have the channel taken down, so I'm not going to take any risks. So that's why I'm sitting here in silence like a loner. This is a set of 3 Loch Ness monsters, but they're plesiosaur-y enough to add to my collection. Can't think what the company is called. I think it might be the UHA company, but I can't remember. Yeah, UHA, it says on the underside here. So many things to remember. This is a Elasmosaurus head, biting, chomping down on a Pteranodon. This is also by, oh, this is by Gaken. This is a company called Gaken. So that's that one. I think this is also in that Gaken line. This is a leaping ichthyosaur. Did it say? No, this is Bandai. So they all look the same, really. Stylistically, they're very similar. This one's leapt out of the water, and it's chomping on a squid, and there's little bits of water coming off of its fins, dorsal fin and limbs. This is the 3D Fame Master puzzle. I think this one comes in several different color variants, and you have to put it together. And I think, although I've got a few more to go, once I've done this one, I'm going to put an end to the stream, and we'll pick up where we left off another time. Maybe later today or maybe tomorrow. So thanks everybody for joining me and helping to make my chores a little bit more enjoyable. I don't do this dusting very often. It's just such a big and time-consuming job to do it right. But it's nice to have some company while I'm doing it. So, scientific things. Am I the only one left? No, 4 viewers. So there's some other people who have been lurking in the background. But for now, that's it from me. And I will hopefully see you guys next time. So, bye.